Do you dream of fairies and princesses? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and today on the show, Graham Allan is joining me once again to continue our discussion about his book, Holiday Magic at the Disney Parks, Celebrations Around the World from Fall to Winter. We had so much fun chatting about the Disney Parks holiday festivities last week, but had tons more to talk about that we didn't get to. So we decided to do a part 2 for this episode. So if you're hearing this before you listen to last week's episode, you may want to check that one out first. Our holiday conversation continues right after this. We're now in the final month of 2020, which means you need to get yourself ready for 2021. So get ahead of the game and order yourself, or a loved one, the 2021 Disney Coast to Coast wall and/or desk calendar. This calendar features original photos taken by me around the Disneyland and Walt Disney World resorts, featuring favorite Disney attractions and characters. In addition to helping support more free episodes of Disney Coast to Coast for the new year, you'll also be helping the cast member pantry, as 20% of the profits of all calendars sold before the end of 2020 will be donated to the cause helping to support out-of-work Disney cast members. To order your DCTC 2021 calendars, head to DisneyCoastToCoast.com or click on the link in this episode's description.
What makes Disney magic more magical? The holidays.
Hello, Graham. Welcome back to Disney Coast to Coast. You did not expect to be here again so quickly, did you?
No, but I'm thrilled to be back here again. I think we were joking about how big the book was. I guess we couldn't fit it all into one podcast, so we have to come back again.
We really couldn't. We kept talking after, and then even after that, I was like, there's so much more to talk about. I was like, let me just see. I always try to be respectful of people's time, but let me just see if you'd be interested in coming back to continue the discussion. It's kind of ironic. Last time you were down the street in Glendale, I believe, right? While I was in Burbank. And now you're on the other side of the world. You're in England right now while I'm still in Burbank. And we're still discussing the same thing.
Yes, and through the magic of technology, it's still like we're down the street from one another.
It's true. Listen, the likelihood of us seeing each other is just as much as it was last time. So, oh man.
Very true, very true.
In any case, let's jump right back into it, because one of the things we touched on last time, we talked a bit about Haunted Mansion Holiday and just this idea of holiday overlays. And I'd really love to talk more about holiday overlays, because the one that really started it was the Country Bears at Magic Kingdom. And I remember as a kid actually seeing that holiday overlay more than the original show, because I would always tend to go around Christmas time. And, it's still a little sad to me that we don't get that anymore, but luckily, it's still in Tokyo, is it?
Tokyo does still generally include it, and they have, and certainly in recent years, they have cycled through all three of the Country Bear shows in the course of the year, the Jamboree, the Vacation Hoedown, and the Christmas show, the holiday show. Yes, it was the very first of the sort of big attraction makeovers, the big holiday makeovers, back in 1984 at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom in Florida. And it's a brilliant idea, right? Because the Country Bears is sort of presented as a repertory theater company. So why not put on different costumes and sing different shows? And it turned out to be and I don't want to undersell the effort that went into this, but a relatively straightforward exercise for the Imagineers to sort of reimagine. And, there was obviously re-recording and reprogramming. But once that's done, the idea of swapping the show out every year, it's not, an epic scale job. And it was really popular. People loved the idea. Guests loved the idea that their favorite bears were still there doing a show, but it was a different show.
Yeah, I think that that's such a great concept. Like you said, it is an a troupe of actors. So it just 100% makes sense. I thought that this was a great way to test the overlay process. And, like you said, once you program it, it's there for year after year once you switch the costumes out. And it ran for quite some time at Magic Kingdom. It sadly went away. I don't know why. Do you happen to have any idea why? Was it just a lack of popularity?
I don't know. There's all sorts of measurements and metrics go into the decision making these things, and so I don't know. Obviously, at Disneyland, the attraction is no longer there, and so could no longer present the show at Disneyland. Yeah, so Tokyo, if there's anywhere to see it, I don't know about this year, but if there's anywhere to see it, it would be Tokyo in the future.
Yeah, the whole overlay thing is just really interesting because I totally get where they come from as far as like Haunted Mansion Holiday is available at Disneyland, but not so much at Walt Disney World. And the reasoning that I hear often is that Disneyland has so many locals that they need things changed up so often. And Walt Disney World, it's a lot of tourists who might be bummed if they don't get to experience the traditional Haunted Mansion. And I totally get that mentality. So I feel like it is a pretty big decision if you do decide to do a holiday overlay for an attraction. There's a lot to consider because there's always going to be somebody who's there for the first time who wants to experience the classic that you're kind of taking that away from, even though they're getting something special.
Yes, and I think Disney is very good at being tuned in to guest expectations and trying really hard to stay within the lines of those guest expectations. I think if you look at the history of these makeovers, these holiday makeovers, they've all been popular. There's not a dud among them. So I think that the idea that guests maybe can find something new in a new experience, a familiar experience with a new experience, actually does work, rather well. You look at, It's a Small World, when they do the holiday version, is almost a complete transformation. It is the same dolls, but it's a different audio track. It's decorated very differently inside. There's some different costumes. It is a pretty different experience, top to tail.
Yeah, Small World was actually the next thing on my list, but you made a comment that there haven't been any duds, and there was one that kind of was, but that was fixed so brilliantly the following year, and that was Jingle Cruise. And Jingle Cruise was this thing where, like, the first year they kind of didn't commit to it as much as maybe guests wanted, and it was like, oh, that was it? But then when they kind of realized, oh, people are into this concept, gosh, they fixed it that following year, and it seems to keep growing. At Walt Disney World, it stopped at Disneyland, but that was such a fun little makeover, and I think a very unexpected one.
Yes, there's a storyline to it, of course, but it's one where you just don't imagine that there's a holiday twist to a jungle exploration, and perhaps that's what makes it entertaining. I know for me, the whole new raft of puns that they can come up with for the holidays is one of the reasons to do it. It's
yes,
those skippers have extra fun at the holidays. They have a whole new script.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back to It's a Small World Holiday real quickly. I want to read an excerpt from the book because I'm ashamed to say I actually didn't know this. So I'm going to read this out loud. It says, as Mary Blair's original backstory goes, children marooned indoors on a rainy day make a new world for their dolls to play in, fashioning the iconic realm of It's a Small World using boxes, doilies, paper mache, and their boundless imaginations. First of all, I never knew that was the original concept of the attraction. I'd never heard that before in a documentary or a book or anything. Where did you find that research?
Actually, I guess I feel I had heard some of that story before. It was in talking to the people behind the Small World Holiday makeover. They sort of they dug more deeply into it for us. I think as you ride through it, it sort of makes perfect sense. It does look like handmade. It quite deliberately looks handmade. It's not just the dolls of the world coming together for a song. There's a little bit more depth to it than that. And I think that's what gives the attraction a little bit of heart too.
Yeah, the original backstory is fascinating. It goes on to say, with winter upon us, cold and snowy weather has once again kept these creative youngsters and their craftiness indoors. Ever resourceful, the universe they create for their toys and dolls this time is all about celebrations of the season. Thus, It's a Small World holiday was born. Now, this is one that, like you said, this one is extreme as far as a makeover. Like, even just the exterior of the building is crazy. How much time does it take them to put this one together? Several weeks at least, right?
I think, in a normal year, 2.5 to 3 weeks. So the lights on the exterior take a little bit longer, but they can be worked on, before the attraction flips. The neat thing about prep for a whole attraction makeover, and Haunted Mansion Holiday is the same, is that the attraction closes, and so they can work on it, if they need to, 24 hours a day. They don't. It's planned to not need that, but it's not like they can only do it 4 hours a night or 6 hours a night, which is some of a lot of the onstage decor. They're very limited. So with an attraction, they can put multiple shifts of work into it. But yeah, 2.5 weeks, 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, I know they always make, slight changes year after year, but this one, I certainly didn't experience it when it first started. I've seen it definitely in more recent years, and I'm always blown away at the scale of change in there. But did this one, do you know when it started, was it kind of like full-blown from the beginning, or was it more like Jingle Cruise where they tested the waters? It was like, added a Christmas tree, and like, oh, hey, people like that. Let's really do it now.
So it was pretty big from the beginning. There are things that have been, evolved and changed through the years. Big things like the big snowman in the final scene was not there in the first year. That was added later. I think through the years, some of the props that were maybe made, let's say, modestly, the first year have been remade in a richer way with more lights or just more substantial. A little bit more is done with costumes now than in the first year. In the first year was an experiment. It was just a heck of an experiment.
Yeah.
I can remember seeing, and maybe I said this last time, I am quite fond of lots of Christmas lights, and so, I just needed to see the facade and I was sold. But that was, that's a pretty major commitment to do that to the facade, and I do remember the first time I saw it being utterly blown away at the scale. I think, oh my goodness, that's the sort of idea that I would have pitched and expected to be, shot down in seconds. Like, who was it that got to pitch that idea and then was told, go for it?
But also, they used a map projection on the exterior before we were projection mapping on the castles and stuff, right? Yeah. So that was kind of, one of the early days of map projection on the exterior of the building. So
it's nice, and I'll say flat. It's not quite flat, but it's a pretty nice projection surface. And so it was, one of the first deployments of, let's change out the show, or let's do a little bit of a show every so often with projection there.
Yeah, projection mapping, like you said, it's one of the more flat surfaces that they project on. I'm blown away at the Tree of Life over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. I don't know how they projection map on that thing and make it look so good, because it's the complete opposite of It's a Small World, or at least it looks that way, where there's zero flat surface on that thing. So I'm always blown away by that.
Well, projection mapping is actually a little bit of a science now, and there's some of what Disney has done over the years has pioneered this. And I know you don't want to get too deep in the physics of it all here, but there's a balance of the science of what the image looks like in the projector to what it looks like on the surface, and it has to look good on the surface from multiple angles too. And something that isn't rectangular, like the Tree of Life, is an interesting exercise. Also, the Towers of Terror in Florida and in Paris have pretty rich projection mapping on them too, and it's not simple. Even though those are, I'll say, rectangular buildings, there's some interesting optical physics in how the projection is created in ways to have it look good from many angles, not just from the front.
Yeah, I can imagine that process of testing is like way more extreme than anybody think. I mean, in the simplest sense, we think, oh, they set up a projector and they project it on this building or whatever. And I'm sure the testing and, all of the different problems you run into must be immense, I would guess.
There's a discipline to this now, and there's actually, the first thing you do is you actually map it with grids. And those grids are then used to distort the real images in ways that have them sort of undistort back to what you want them to look like when the image lands on the surface. And because it's done it more than just Disney now. You'll find projection mapping in lots of places. But Disney was something of a pioneer of this, and it certainly has continued to push the envelope. Like the castles too. The castles are not flat surfaces, particularly the Cinderella Castle in Florida. There's some pretty interesting, rich projection mapping done.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've seen advertisements for even like home projection mapping at this point, where you can buy these devices that will scan what it is you want to projection map on, and then figure it out inside. And of course, it's way more low tech than what Disney does, but it's just interesting to think that is now available to consumers.
A little bit more mainstream, yes.
Yeah, that's crazy. Let's head over to Disney's Hollywood Studios now and talk about these enhancements that were made just a few years back. Echo Lake in 2017 was such a surprise, a really pleasant surprise, and has such a distinct style that I don't think you really see anywhere else. Maybe Buena Vista Street. I don't know. Is it the same era, or is it a couple decades later?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly right. You're exactly right. That sort of tinsel and Tinseltown look, mid 20th century look. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So 2017, this came about. I'm always curious, like, why are these decisions made, I guess? Is it like, hey, we have some extra money, let's put it toward the holidays? Or is it, we really need more holidays here, it's completely lacking? I know with Hollywood Studios, they kind of lost a big holiday entertainment there with Osborne. So was that a huge part of the reason why this enhancement came?
I don't know the calculus of deciding to make a substantial investment, in new decor. Certainly the Osborne Lights had retired a couple of years before that, and the Osborne Lights had been the studio's anchor, if you like, for the holidays. There had been decorations, and actually, some pretty neat mid-century style tinselly decorations, pretty authentic, period authentic. And my favorite, by the way, from the very early years, they had giant bubble lights. If you remember bubble lights from your Christmas tree as a kid. Where there were little oil-filled lights where the heat of the lamp would cause little air bubbles to circulate. And they recreated giant versions of this on the original tree from 1989 onwards to the mid-90s. And so there was always that notion, but on a much smaller scale. So the Osborne Lights retired after the 2015 holiday season. That had been a big anchor for holidays at the studio. I think there was also, there's this, I think, very pleasantly relentless force of, how can we do better? How can we aim higher? And there isn't all the resources in the world, or all the time in the world, or all the money in the world to just do that all the time. But everything is refreshed, periodically. I do know that there was a new executive running the Studios Park that was very, very keen on the holidays, and just personally very passionate about the holidays. And sometimes that makes a difference too. Is you find a leader who is just really passionate about something, and they find ways to help. They sort of run into, like, a really strong leader. It's not just about signing budgets, right? Is they run interference to let the people who can deliver something exciting go do it, and create the freedom. And I think that happened a little bit at the studios too. But it was, I think at some level, the decorating team just said it's time. It's time for us to take this to the next level, and they got the support to do it. And boy, did they That 2017 was a pretty dramatic transformation of the decorating package, as they call it, at the studios.
Yeah, I love Santa Gertie. I love Echo Lake area in general. It just gives me all those Disney MGM Studios feels. So I just love that area in general. And when they did that, I was like, this is so cool. Like, I just really love what they did. And of course, when we talk about Disney's Hollywood Studios and Christmas, I always go to the Eiffel Tower and the giant Santa hat that was on there. I wish that they had, I don't know. Did they send it to Paris, perhaps, that hat?
No, that would have been a little bit too big. The water tower in Paris is not as large as the one in Florida. I don't know where the hat is because the archives, I don't think, has the space for something that big. That's a good question.
They should have cut it into patches and put them in pins and sold them, because I absolutely would have bought one. I love the Eiffel Tower so much. I miss it every time I go, and they did some fun stuff with it through the years. The Santa hat included, for sure.
By the way, I'm totally with you on that. The whole area around Echo Lake and that transformation. I love the fact that the Christmas tree got moved back inside the park.
Yeah.
Because, in opening years, in the park's early years, it was right outside the Chinese theater. But then when the big anniversary icon, the big sorcerer hat, was built on that spot, you really couldn't put the Christmas tree there. So the tree moved outside the park, actually, to in front of the ticket booths outside. And actually, it was a lovely place to get a picture. It was actually, that you could get pictures all around, the PhotoPass people all around, you could get pictures all around. It was a little bit more accessible, but it wasn't, core to the holidays at the park. And so in 2017, it moved back inside to the little island or the little isthmus on Echo Lake. I think it looks gorgeous, reflected on the rippling water of the lake.
Yeah.
And, you're right, Gertie, with her mournful expression and a Santa hat and, one lonely decoration hanging from her mouth. And the storyline, by the way, of all the decorations floating on the lake, on the water, is that Gertie kind of spilled the box of decorations and she couldn't quite get the hang of putting decorations on the tree. So, she's a dinosaur. She's a wee bit clumsy. And so there's decorations floating on the water and they light up at night. It's just beautiful.
I love the year-round kind of Christmas reference around Echo Lake. Do you know what I'm talking about with the crate from It's a Wonderful Life? I think that that's so fantastic. And I ran into that just a few years ago. I noticed it for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like this really cool It's a Wonderful Life reference in the park just year-round. So it's a fun little Easter egg.
It is. I love the Studios Park. It has a really nice heart to it, nice heart and soul to it.
Yeah, no, you talked about, you said at one point it was just time to take a look at this thing and make an upgrade to the decorations there. Is there a general timeline where, if there were decorations, let's just say randomly Frontierland, and like, we haven't changed the decorations there other than just upkeep in the last, I'm making up a number, 7 years. Is there a timeline like that where they say after 5 years, 7 years, whatever, let's take a good hard look. Maybe we don't need to make changes, but it is time to at least seriously think about it.
So it's not a hard and fast rule. There's a lifetime to the decorations themselves. And some items, some of the ornaments will actually only last 1 year on stage, one season on stage. And have to be replaced. So there's a sort of natural refresh that causes two things. It causes creative rethinking or a creative thought of, well, if we're going to change it, do we change it to something else or do we, keep it looking the same? I think the part of your question is more dramatic, like what was happening at the studios, or like this year at the Grand Floridian in Florida, the tree has a whole new set of decorations on the tree. It's not just fresh versions of past years. It's a whole new story of 12 Days of Christmas. Also, still very classically Victorian, beautiful. But there is no hard and fast rule of, well, it's 7 years, therefore we must do this. Sometimes the area that the decorations are hanging in is changed for other reasons, and the decor has to fit. It has to belong. It has to enhance the story. It can't, run counter to the story of an area. And the decorating teams, end up working very closely with the Imagineering teams who are redoing resorts, parks, shopping districts, to make sure that the decor that they're going to install when that area is done matches what that area is going to look like. And even down to things like a resort hotel, I'm really impressed with how much effort and energy goes into the resort hotels. And Old Port Royale at the Caribbean Beach in Florida was really completely reimagined. The Riviera Resort caused a little bit of a reconfiguration of the topology of the resort. The old check-in building was removed to make way for the Riviera Resort. So Old Port Royale was reimagined and rebuilt with a little bit different color scheme from how it had been before. And the decorating team actually went and worked with the Imagineers. They understood what the decor style of the building was going to be, and they came up with a whole new package of decorations in bright island colors. They still fit, like they look like they belong in that building, but the building has changed. The building has a new art direction. We're going to have a whole new set of decorations to fit that art direction. And that's years in the making, a couple of years in the making.
Yeah, that's great. And another place that had a major change just last year was Disney's Animal Kingdom, where that got a holiday decoration package that I don't think anybody expected, and it was so wonderful in various different areas. At the entrance, we got, what do they call it? The menagerie or something?
Yes, and so the Animal Kingdom is an interesting holiday decoration challenge. So first of all, it's very, very green. Like the park is already very, very green, so just hanging green garlands doesn't work. They've known this for years. I mean, this was always, part of the challenge for Animal Kingdom. So Animal Kingdom has always had decorations that were just a little bit different. They were always, more emphasis on other colors. Obviously, there was green stuff. There were trees. There was garlands. There were wreaths, but they had to be really heavily loaded with decorations and with really brightly colored decorations. But Animal Kingdom also represents parts of the world and cultures that don't necessarily celebrate Christmas.
Interesting.
More so than the other parks, which are more rooted in Western culture. I mean, obviously not exclusively so, but I think more so than Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom is rooted in cultures of Africa and Asia that are not necessarily, Christmas. And I think what the decorating team was going for in what they did last year was, okay, how do we add, it's time, we want to do something with Animal Kingdom, but how do we do it in a way that isn't just another Christmas tree or another Christmas tree that isn't green so that it will, fit into the environment? And I think there were some that were fairly easy, like Diwali, the Festival of Lights, doing that in the Asia area, almost, a no-brainer, although I think they did it spectacularly well. I mean, they went nuts with the just gorgeous marigold color palette in the Anandapur village area. Very traditional lanterns and kites and decor there. But then around the Discovery Island area, they said, let's do a winter solstice, or I guess solstice. The Southern Hemisphere has a solstice too, but it's at the other end of the year. But let's do a solstice theme where we bring in winterish animals. That we make it about penguins or deer, reindeer, or caribou, or polar bears, or white birds like doves or cranes. And then let's maybe make more of the decor white, enhanced with the kind of colors that you might find in a polar aurora. And that's, you mentioned the Tree of Life. The winter moments for the Tree of Life awakenings, I think are just gorgeous, because they are very evocative of the polar aurora. If you've ever had the chance to see Northern Lights, I mean, it's a pretty interesting experience. The richness of the colors is much more intense, I think, than people expect. It's more intense in real life than a photograph can represent. And that's what they were really going for, is, okay, how can we make it, it's not Christmas, but it's something that is a holiday, and it's a meaningful holiday, and it's something we can run with. And you mentioned the menagerie. Those puppets I thought were brilliant because the guests' kids got to interact with them. You actually got to meet a polar bear, pet a polar bear, pose with a penguin. And I also thought that the strolling musicians was a real clever idea. Also, last year, Christmas came to Pandora.
I was going to get to that. That was some creative thinking there. I loved seeing the handmade stuff of the locals and how they took some stuff from Earth and then others from Pandora and kind of intermingled them into decorations. If you look at the garlands there and the ornaments, they're also interestingly made.
Yes, and a lot of custom stuff. You look around a lot of the parks, the decorations are custom assembled, but they're made from commercially available ornaments. Mm-hmm. A lot of what you see in Pandora was made just for Pandora because Na'vi materials are not generally available at your local craft store. So if you're going to tell the story, I think it's an interesting story. It is the expats from Earth that run the tour company that we are visiting as guests, that they're sort of organizing our tours of Pandora. It's those Earth expats that are trying to recreate the holidays that they knew from back home. And, there's a few things that they could stuff in their bags, but a lot of things that they just had to make out of the local materials. It's kind of a clever idea. And it is funny. There's a great sense of humor in a lot of what you would see in Pandora. And I think, perhaps necessarily so. You can't just put up a Christmas tree on another planet. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I also love how Disney's Animal Kingdom goes to the entirely opposite extreme of these handmade, handcrafted things, and we get the glorious tackiness of Dino Land USA.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they actually had these ornaments, I remember, with like little dino footprints on them that I really wish they sold in Dino Land because they were the cutest thing. I was like, these are amazing.
We might have to suggest, we might have to put that one in the suggestions box. That's a good idea.
I think they should, yes.
Well, and that's Chester and Hester, right? Chester and Hester running their mid-century kitsch version of the holidays. With tacky is actually kind of a good word, and of course last year it also got added to the Golden Gate Bridge, to the giant skeleton on the Golden Gate Bridge. That made me laugh too, turning the dinosaur's head into a Santa.
Yeah,
that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it's fun. So I just want to go back to Pandora for one quick second, because obviously Pandora is a newer land. So do you know, like, when something like Pandora is being created and the Imagineers are working on it, are they at that time in those early stages meeting with the holiday decorating people to have those discussions?
So generally, yes. So I think a land like Pandora is a little bit different because it's not obvious that there would be holidays celebrated there. And I think that was the initial conceit was, okay, there's no holidays on Pandora. The holidays is an Earth thing. Much like there's, you won't find holiday decor at Black Spire Outpost because, holidays are not celebrated on that.
We've got Life Day. It's going to happen. We've got Life Day.
Yes, perhaps they're saving that up. But
well, in the book, there's this book, the whole, what was it called? The Traveler's Guide to Batuu. And there is mention of Life Day and holiday decor, and they get very descriptive about it. I'm pretty sure in future years we're going to be seeing that.
Yes, we'll perhaps we'll have to do an update to the book when that comes out. But I think in general, when an area is being developed that would normally be decorated for the holidays, the decorating team is working with the Imagineers as the development process is going on. Probably the biggest recent example of that was Disney Springs, where Disney Springs went through, a huge transformation and expansion, but the whole new areas were added. And there was obviously a need to decorate those for the holidays in their first year. Like, you're not going to wait to do that. It's actually part of the holiday shopping experience is to have decorations. And so the holiday services team at Walt Disney World was working with the Imagineers for 2 years before Disney Springs opened to understand, okay, what's the art direction of each of the 4 areas of the Springs, what do we want to do holiday-wise, and each has a different holiday identity. It's not just one art direction for the whole Springs. Each of the 4 areas has a sort of a particular holiday identity. And I think quite a bit of experimentation is done to just work out, okay, what will work, what won't work. And they're doing that off stage, and they're doing that, out of sight, but, all the creative teams working together. It's one of the things we found the decorators really excited about was the chance to do something new. And they really get into it, and they almost can't wait to get their teeth into a new land, a new area, or a redo of a land that's dramatic enough that they actually have to really get the creative juices pumping.
You mentioned Disney Springs, and I'd be remiss not to mention the new thing we got for 1 year, Starbright Holidays, which was this drone show done over the Springs, essentially. And that was such an interesting treat that the guests got. What was that, 3 years ago at this point or something?
2016, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
So 4 years ago. Wow. Yeah, that was so unique. Perhaps a little disappointing it didn't return, but do you know why that didn't return or what that was all about?
I don't. I mean, it was a partnership with Intel. It was I very publicly made a partnership with Intel. Intel was experimenting with the technology, and I mean, those drones went on to participate at other events like the Super Bowl, and help add show and pizzazz there. I thought it was gorgeous. I mean, I do like nighttime shows in general, and the notion of lights in the sky is going to be appealing to me anyway. They were able to pull off some pretty neat visual tricks with 300 drones, computer controlled, flying in formation. And all you could see was the light. They were small. They were only about 10 inches across, and they were black, painted black. And the only thing was big color-changing LED on the underside of the drone. That's all you would see. You could hear them a little bit, but you couldn't see them. And then they would just light up. And so they would come into position. They would fly into position, and then the lights would come on. It was like this dove just appeared, the shape of a dove, or there was a beautiful Christmas tree effect. And because they're flying, they could animate it. So the Christmas tree, sort of, you saw it form, and then it sort of spiraled a little bit, and then it sort of dissipated in ways that you really can't do with fixed lights, or even with projection on a surface. I think we're going, this is not based on insider information, but I think we're going to see more of this technology because it is such a neat experience, and it needs to mature a little bit, I think, to be repeatable, 3 times a night forever. I think, 3 times a night for a month is one thing. 3 times a night forever is something else. And the technology has to be pretty darn mature for that.
The one thing that I've always, when drones started being used in general or talked about, the one thing I always was like, this effect would be so beautiful is that beautiful scene in Tangled when all of the lanterns are floating toward the sky. I was like, that is like, I feel like drones were built for that effect, So hopefully sometime in the future we'll get that. I think.
I'm sure somebody in the entertainment department is thinking exactly that, and they're just waiting for the chance to go make it work.
Now, we've been talking a lot about the fabulous decorators at the Disney parks doing their work, but let's take a second to talk about the guests. And I'm most specifically talking about over at Fort Wilderness, these guests who decorate their tents and trailers. Did this just start because a guest did it once, or was this something that Disney was encouraging and it became this thing? But this is wild. And did you know about this?
I happened upon it by accident in the very early days of doing research for the book. It might have been 2009 or 2010. I was just going off to do a photo shoot at Fort Wilderness. And just on the bus, riding from the parking lot, so I'm seeing these. It's like, wow, this is pretty remarkable. Now, I guess you see at all of the resorts, you will see some guest decorations for Halloween and for Christmas, actually, maybe more so for Christmas. And the vacation club properties, I think, really, it happens more there. You see it more there because people are treating it as their home away from home, and perhaps are going there for their actual holidays, and they're going to stay there over the holidays. This notion of I'm going camping at the holiday time, so I will decorate my campsite, is not unique to Disney. I think you will find that at other campsites and RV parks around the country. I think the scale of what happens at Fort Wilderness is utterly amazing. I did not know that Disney had licensed so many inflatable lawn art pieces. I don't know how people get it all. There must be no room inside their RV until they unpack all the decorations and set them up, because it's amazing. I saw one last year actually where they had brought wooden, they might have been cardboard, but they were pretty substantial flat props, and they had turned their RV into Cinderella Castle. I mean, they brought flats, they brought scenery with them, and set it up around their RV. And people get really into it. I don't know if Disney initially encouraged it. I think it happens at campsites anyway. Disney for sure encourages it now. And there's, they do a holiday parade, because people have golf carts too. That's, part of getting around Fort Wilderness is a golf cart. So they'll do a golf cart parade where people dress up their golf carts, and there's prizes, for the best dressed golf cart. And I don't know, I think it's wonderful. And you go walk around there and just meet some of the people who, they're so passionate about the holidays. They're so passionate about Disney. They're so passionate about their family holiday experiences. I know it's a treat. It's a treat to walk around and meet those people. I think at a place like Fort Wilderness, you do find guests that are looking for more than just a hotel. They're not just like staying in a hotel and then just zooming to a park first thing in the morning and staying out as late as possible and then just zooming back to the hotel room just to sleep. They really are looking for a little bit more. They're looking for that sense of, I'm going somewhere where there will be a community, where there will be people to hang with and talk to, and the s'mores around the campfire. I think it's just a little bit of an extra bit of value you get at the campground at Fort Wilderness. But anybody can go wander through. Go wander through at holiday time. It's remarkable.
So obviously that's a pretty unique place to decorate, but another place that maybe people don't think about as often are the Disney Cruise Line ships, as well as Aulani, a Disney resort and spa in Hawaii. And I would assume both of those must be so much fun to decorate, just to, deal with the themes of the ocean and Hawaii and stuff. They must have had a ton of fun coming up with those ideas and decor.
Yes, and interestingly, the 4 cruise ships are decorated a little bit differently. Like, it's not just the same decor installed in all 4. There's some thought to aligning with the color scheme and the theme of each ship. And you see that mostly in the lobby and the atriums where, yes, there's a tree, yes, there's garlands on the balconies, but look at the ornaments, look at the color palette. And it's pulling very much from the environment. It's not the same on each of the ships. One of the things that I surprised me and I thought was really clever is there's a coffee shop on each of the ships up on one of the top decks near the back. And it's in the same place on each ship, and it's essentially the same idea. It's a coffee shop, and they're almost all the same size and shape. And each one has 2 Christmas trees in it, but they're decorated a little bit differently. They're each decorated with miniature coffee cups and teacups and coffee inspired things, but they're different. Like the set of decorations on the Disney Wonder is not the same as the set of decorations of the Disney Fantasy, even though there's a tree. It's the same size and shape tree in the same place, but the different coffee cups. We have, I think, maybe 2 or 3 of them in the book. And I thought, you know what? That is a decorating team that is having a bunch of fun. They are really enjoying their job, but they're also being thoughtful about, how can we stay in the theme of the location, but there's not just rubber stamp out the same thing every time. How can we be unique and create an experience that is just a little bit unique? By the way, decorating the cruise ships is also an interesting undertaking. Like they have to do it very quickly. Ship is in port, and that's not always at Port Canaveral. The fall itineraries will dock in all sorts of interesting places, and the decorating team has to get the decorations and themselves to wherever the ship is docking, and that has sometimes been places like New York or Galveston or San Diego. And like they have to know where the ship is going to dock on the day that they need to go in and decorate and work it out.
When you were taking photos of the cruise ship, did you have to go on a cruise, or were you let on one day to just snap some photos?
Each of those shoots was a day in dock.
Oh, darn it.
Well, I don't know that I had the luxury of time to be, occupied for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Precious. Those 8 weeks when the decorations are up sounds like a long time. It's not a long time if you're trying to document them all. No, the ships are in dock from 6, 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and that's enough time. And most of the time I was doing it when the ships were empty. So I would wait till an area was clear of guests and go take photographs. I would go on at 7 in the morning. I would go onto the ship at 7 in the morning before the guests were leaving to go scope out, okay, what do I need to photograph? Work out here's where I need to have clear. Here's where we cleared first. Let's go shoot that first. Generally, the top of the ship downwards, and also you have to time it to make sure you're done before the first new guests come back on, because they turn the lights out. There's a tree lighting ceremony on the first night at sea, and so they have to turn everything off before the first guest comes back. And so they would always tell me, you have 45 minutes before we have to turn the lights off. Go. I did have to beg on one occasion, could I get 10 more minutes, please? I said yes. Guests will come back on. The first guest will come back on board within a couple of hours of the last guest leaving from the prior cruise.
It's crazy. Do you have any fun stories from Aulani?
Aulani is gorgeous. And I was there for 36 hours, and I can heartily recommend, please stay longer. Like, if you get the chance to go there, stay longer.
It's amazing. I love it there.
They, perhaps not surprisingly, their holiday theme is tropical flowers, just gorgeous tropical flowers in the decor, and little touches of lava rock, birds, some bird ornaments. A lot of rich colors, so traditional Hawaiian colors. I was there the first week of December, maybe a week and a half after Thanksgiving, and it turned out to be a great time to be there because it was more or less deserted. They said that they typically have this 2-week lull between Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday rush, and I was sort of lucky that that's when I was there. But I do, if you go, stay longer. Because I was also, I was doing my day job too at the same time, and on meetings, on conference calls, which detracted a little bit from, from having fun experience. But all of the resorts, decorate in some way. The Vacation Club resorts at Hilton Head and at Vero Beach also do some gorgeous, very cleverly themed decorations. Because people are going there for the holidays. It's part of the experience. It's part of the travel experience in the last few weeks of the year.
Now, we've been talking a lot about how the decorators have so much fun coming up with these ideas and everything. One thing we haven't really touched on are the specialty foods available during the holidays. And I'm going to assume you spoke with quite a few bakers about the food.
Yes, and actually I've managed through not being able to break free from the day job quite as early as I had hoped. I missed the team's visits to the Disneyland Bakery. Becky and Charlie got to visit the Disneyland Bakery and spent a lovely morning. The stories they came back with there was that they weren't sure how anybody could hold down a job there because it smelled so wonderful. How could anybody just go in and work there when it smelled so amazing all day long? Foods is a relatively recent thing to go wild with. I think there have always been, treats of the season, like, apple cider, I think has been around for a long, long time. Holiday decorated cookies have been around for a long, long time. It's really only in the last, maybe 10-ish years that this notion of epically themed food.
The Instagram years, right?
Well, yes, and I think also the holiday parties. So the Halloween and the Very Merry Christmas parties. There was always a quest to have some neat extra value. Like it can't just be a theme park. It can't just be a visit to the park. There has to be more to it. Make the experience a little bit richer. And so, some food theming crept in there before it sort of crept in mainstream. Also, Epcot, always looking to try and draw from the cultures of the countries around World Showcase. It certainly started to creep in there too. But it's only in recent years that it's gone like bananas of just amazing extreme. I might even say extreme, like the churro. Like now, or at least last year at the Disneyland Resort, you could get a menu card that told you where all the different holiday churros were. So it's not just that they exist, but it's enough of a thing that we have to provide people with a map where they can find all of those churros. Or in Tokyo Disneyland, the popcorn, the different popcorn flavors and the holiday popcorn flavors. It's pretty neat.
People are definitely into their specialty holiday food. That is for sure. And you touched upon the specialty parties, which is obviously a huge thing. I just loved reading about in your book, the Disney Family Holiday Party, which was for the cast members essentially. But I think I read like the executives were the one operating the rides and serving the food and such.
Yes, I mean it was part of the fun of the event, and so it was. We'll call it the office Christmas party. It's everybody has their work holiday event of some nature, and for many years in Southern California and in Florida, it was a private party night at Magic Kingdom in Florida and at Disneyland, where employees and their families would come and have the park to themselves. It's obviously this, it's not empty, but it's not as busy as it would be on a normal day. And yes, one of the sort of special experiences was, okay, let's have management do a job to free up the person that would normally do that job to go out and enjoy the party. And that's a splendid idea. I think there were examples where we might say hilarity ensued. Like perhaps the executive or the leader was not quite as good at the job as the employee that they had displaced, but that was part of the fun. I know. When I worked, in corporate at Disney, I would go take tickets at the front gate. That was my favorite job to do at holiday party night. I would be a ticket taker at the front gate, and it's a whole lot of fun. And that's also a low risk job. Like I can't really easily make a mistake.
Yeah.
There, so the fact that I didn't get a lot of training didn't matter. If the machine, if the barcode scanner said let them in, you let them in. If it's not a whole lot of training needed for me to do that job, but that was part of the thing. And unfortunately, the company outgrew it. The company became too big to operate private parties. In Florida, it reached 4 nights, and at Disneyland, it reached 2 nights, and it just the logistics of doing it. Plus, I think, our holiday times have become a little bit more intense. Like there's just more going on, especially people with families. There's an awful lot going on. And the idea now that, okay, just pick a day and come during regular operating hours, it gives families more flexibility.
Now, before I let you go, I got one final question. I'm curious if there is a decoration of yesteryear that if you could bring it back, what would it be?
That is a big question. Well, I said I liked lights. If there were a way to bring back the Osborne Lights, I would be very happy to see that. I love the lights of winter at Epcot, and it's a really simple idea. And people might look at it today and say, well, that's it's not an epic scale spectacle with projection mapping and lasers, but it's just real simple. I thought it was beautiful. And people would just sit on the planters and let the music waft over them, and the lights waft over them. I wouldn't mind bringing back the lights of winter. This one might sound a little bit obscure, but there was a Christmas tree that used to be in the lobby of Coronado Springs before the Grand Destino Tower was added, and the tree topper on that was the most gorgeous carved wooden angel. And it's a little detail. It was a perfect fit for the theme of the resort. And it was a giant tree. It was so far up in the air that I don't know that people really noticed it and saw how detailed it was. I had the advantage of shooting it with a very long lens to get the detail. I would bring that back. And there's a little thing, like I can't bring back the Lights of Winter, but maybe we could dust off that angel out of a drawer somewhere and give it a new home somewhere at Walt Disney World.
Excellent. Well, I love it. Well, Graham, thank you so much for coming on the show once again. Folks, the book is Holiday Magic at the Disney Parks, Celebrations Around the World from Fall to Winter. Believe it or not, we still haven't hit everything in the book, so definitely pick up a copy. And Graham, thank you so much.
Well, Jeff, thank you. It's been a real treat to talk to you. And happy holidays to you and all your listeners.
I hope you all enjoyed both parts of my conversation with Graham Allan. Next week, I'll be taking a look at the classical music used in Disney projects that is usually associated with Christmas and winter. Do you know which projects I'm speaking of? Find out on next Wednesday's episode. The easiest way to make sure you don't miss any of the magic is by subscribing to Disney Coast to Coast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you search, don't forget it's Disney with a Z, Coast to Coast. And now that this episode is ending, it's the perfect time to click on the link in this episode's description to order your DCTC 2021 calendars. And if you'd like to become part of the DCTC community and gain rewards, be sure and check out patreon.com/DisneyCTC. That's patreon.com/DIZNEYCTC. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.